What is up, guys? Archons, and I'm here bringing you guys another YouTube video. In today's video, we're going to be discussing what Shadowlands can't have in it, or at least my number one thing that Shadowlands can't have for my personal opinion. With that out of the way, let's talk about BFA for a minute. BFA has gotten a lot of hate lately. It's had hate, I guess, since launch. People didn't like the Azerite system. They felt it was too RNG. They didn't like the Essence system because it was unfriendly to alts. They didn't like the Corruption system because the Corruptions deal way too much damage, and the secondary stat boosts just aren't enough to keep up with it with the damage essence or the damage corruptions. And it feels just like Titan Forging and War Forging did, where you have to get lucky to get a certain corruption in order to be viable in some cases. And if an alt happens to get best in slot corruption, you then have to choose between your main and your alt because they'll probably be doing the same damage even though your alt is like 30 item levels below your main. So those are just some complaints. The one that I don't really see all that often, though, is the dungeons. And I don't know if it's because people don't run Mythic Plus as much, but me, I'm constantly running Mythic Plus because I have fun doing that in between raid days for us. I think it's fun to do. But the biggest problem I have with it right now is that most of the dungeons do not function very well. There are some that do. There are some that work just fine, and it's a smooth run for the most part, outside of a couple just heavy hitting mechanics, but that's more the dungeon difficulty than anything else. It's intended. But then you have a fight like what you're going to watch here in a minute with Waycrest. As you can see, we're on the third witch who casts the Jagged Nettles, and you'll see that I'll get the Nettles, and I'll actually get my HP to 100%, but for whatever reason, the Nettles just won't fall off. And I actually get my health to 100% at least 3 or 4 times. And the Nettles just refuse to come off me, and they're supposed to fall off at 90%. See, as you can see now, I'm just getting them. So my problem is that mechanics for bosses have to work consistently, otherwise you end up with unintended difficulty scaling. So let's say you follow the mechanics correctly and you're still dying. That's not fun. That's just unfair. Why would I, keep playing this game if I'm going to follow the mechanics to the T and still get punished for it? That doesn't make any sense. Another dungeon that comes to mind, especially, is Tol Dagor. If you guys go back and look at the channel history from around the time BFA first came out, you'll see that I uploaded a video that had Jess being pulled through the wall. And they did fix this. They made it to where Jess couldn't be pulled by most abilities through the wall, though it is still possible to pull him on the back side of the room. So if you're running up the stairwell and you know where he's standing through the wall, you can actually drop an ability and it can actually clip through the wall and still pull him. There really is no benefit to pulling him on high keys because what's going to happen is he's going to start the boss fight, he'll run around to you, and he'll literally aggro all of the mobs on his way to you. So unless you have the DPS to kill like all of the fish and the dude casting lockdown and all the guards, you're pretty much just going to die. And it'll be through no fault of your own because the ability should never be clipping through the wall in the first place. Other examples on Tol. Same floor with Jess, you can actually pull the final boss of Tol, which is great, because what happens is he casts the Heartstopper Venom all the way down to that floor that you're on, and then he proceeds to Deadeye people through the ceiling, as well as Explosive Blast them. The cannons can also apparently hit you through the ceiling as well, through 2 floors and kill you. I've had that happen before too. Some other examples. The mobs actually above you, if you don't happen to pull the final boss, you can actually pull on the floor in between and get mobs that won't come down to you. But what will happen is you'll aggro them, the healer will heal, and they'll end up getting the aggro from healing. And the mobs will start killing the healer through the ceiling, and there's nothing you can do about it because there's no way for the tank to taunt them through the ceiling because you can't directly target them, but they can still target you. And your healer dies, and then your tank starts getting hit. Your tank dies because it's like 3 or 4 mobs up top. And from there, you pretty much lose your key because, bugs. So Shadowlands cannot have a dungeon where you're able to pull things through walls like this. They have to make sure and get this right. And if it does come up within the first couple months where you're able to do this, they need to hotfix this immediately. Otherwise, it's going to show that Blizzard has no initiative. It's going to show that they don't care about the product. This has been 2 years and Tol Dagor is still in a mess to play in. That's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. So here's how I would go about fixing this problem. The first month, I would make sure and listen to player feedback on the issues. If there's any bosses that aren't functioning as intended, any mobs that aren't functioning as intended, any type of pulls that are, happening where people are grabbing mobs through walls, those need to be addressed within the first month before the raid comes out. Because once the raid comes out, you're going to have to focus everything into making sure the raid is functioning correctly. Once that's done, you need to make sure that your seasonal affix is also not breaking these dungeons. And a prime example is back to Toldagor. The emissary affix actually used to bug out where you'd hit the knockback emissary and she'd go through the wall and she'd drop down to the floor below and then she'd pull everything on that floor on her way to try to come back to you. That cannot happen. You cannot have major bugs like that cost people keystones through no fault of their own. That's just not going to be good. And you also have to remember that Mythic Plus dungeons are the lifeblood of the expansion. Whether you're willing to believe that or not, they are the lifeblood. Once raid is done, there's really nothing else to do. Once you get that heroic ahead of the curve or, the mythic cutting edge, there's really nothing else for you to do, realistically, outside of do Mythic Plus, maybe do PvP. Those are the really two things that you can do. And the people who don't want to PvP and they just want to do PvE stuff, they need Mythic Plus to function as intended. Otherwise, there's just no enjoyment there. And they're going to drop the expansion and you're going to see numbers plummet again. Please, Blizzard, make sure that your Mythic Plus functions as intended and you listen to the bug reports. We cannot have another 2 years where you ignore these complaints and dungeons are just unplayable. That's going to kill everything. You cannot have another Toldagor. You cannot have another Waycrest Manor where you apply a dot to somebody and they actually do the intended and still can't get the dot off them. You can't have that. That's not healthy for the game. Anyways, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you agree with me. Let me know, because I can't be the only one that feels this way for the Mythic Plus system. I can't be the only one who's ever lost a key to Toldagor bugging out and killing you through the ceiling. Let me know. Do you guys think that dungeons should come first within the first month over everything else? Or do you think that they should focus on the other systems or the quests? Let me know. I'm curious to see what your guys' thoughts are. What are your guys' number one thing that Shadowlands can't have in it? As always, I'm Mark Tsunami here, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Later.